Welcome back, friends, to the Food Freedom Podcast. I'm your host, Coach Mary, and I'm a food addiction recovery coach helping women break free from the destructive cycles of disordered eating. Before we jump into today's episode, if you want more help building food sobriety and staying consistent, make sure you visit my website, foodfreedomwithmary.com. Get on my email list. That's where I share new podcast episodes and strategies that will help you grow in your recovery and in your pursuit of food sobriety, and also updates about coaching opportunities. All right. Today, I want to talk about something really important, not just what we eat, but what we believe. The truth is many of us have grown up believing things about food and health that simply were not true. And those beliefs have shaped the way that we eat, the way that we diet, the way that we move, the way we judge ourselves, and even the way that we are approaching our recovery from food addiction and other disordered behaviors. So if you're trying to overcome food addiction, here's one thing that you have to understand, and that is your beliefs drive your behavior. So today we're going to talk about some of the biggest health messages that have shaped modern eating habits and why questioning those beliefs is actually part of healing our relationship with food. I'm going to warn you right now, some people are so deeply entrenched in these beliefs, and the dogma and the propaganda and the brainwashing and the gaslighting about some of these has been very strong and present in our lives, that sometimes we hear these things and we get angry and we cannot imagine that what we believe about this not to be true. And so sometimes people get defensive and they want to argue it, or they have a medical professional in their family, or they themselves are a medical professional, and they just can't get out of their own way on some of these. So that's your warning that there might be some of these that tick you off. And I'm going to encourage you to ask yourself why you feel so defensive and sure about it, why it makes you angry. And I want to encourage you to learn more about it. And also remember that, there's always, I don't know exactly what I want to say here, but there's always two sides to everything. Okay. So actually 3 sides. There's he said, she said, and the truth, right? But so I want you to just, if any of these make you angry, I want you to examine why, and then I want you to look into it further and consider that, remember that anecdotal evidence is still evidence. So you can have some very, very strong belief, and someone else's experience can contradict that, and you got to be willing to look at why. Okay, so let's look at the big picture. If you look back at pictures from the 1970s, you're going to notice something, right? People were generally leaner looking, right? And yet over the last several decades, we've been told we were getting better health advice, right? We've been told eat less fat, eat more grains. They've even had the audacity to say heart-healthy grains. Eat low-fat everything, snack all day, be afraid of cholesterol, avoid red meat, cover yourself in sunscreen constantly. But during that same period, obesity, diabetes, metabolic disease, and food addiction and disordered relationships with food have exploded. Okay, so now listen carefully. This episode is not about conspiracy theories, although I do love me a good conspiracy theory. It's actually about recognizing that public health messages can be wrong, okay? And when they are wrong, millions of people suffer the consequences. I think we are seeing that play out in our society today. Many of those consequences show up in the women and had showed up in myself and in the women that I work with every day. Women who, like myself, who have spent decades dieting, overly restricting, binging, feeling like something was wrong with us, like we're just broken beyond repair, blaming ourselves, right? When in reality, we were never following advice. We were following advice that never addressed the real problem. So let's talk about these lies. Lie number 1, fat makes you fat. For decades, we were told fat was the enemy. Butter was bad. Eggs were dangerous. Red meat was risky. And so food companies replaced fat with something else. Sugar, refined carbs, and ultra-processed foods, low-fat yogurt, low-fat cookies, fat-free this, fat-free that, low-fat frozen meals, all loaded with sugar and chemical additives designed to make you keep eating. And here's the problem. Those foods are hyperpalatable, meaning they light up the reward centers in your brain, exactly the same pathways involved in all addiction, okay? So millions of people who thought they were eating healthy were actually being pushed deeper into compulsive eating patterns. Lie number 2, red meat is dangerous. People get mad about this one. Another message we've heard for decades is that red meat causes disease, specifically cancer, and that red meat is a carcinogen. Ugh, that drives me crazy. But the problem is, many studies that have come to these conclusions, they lump things together that are not the same at all. Okay, grass-fed steak gets grouped in with highly processed hot dogs, deli meats, fast food burgers, including the bun, pizza, lasagna. So obviously these things are not all red meat. There's other things involved. They're very different foods. Humans have eaten meat for thousands, if not longer. I don't have an opinion on how long humans have been on the planet, but I know for as long as we've existed, we've eaten meat. So what changed in modern times was the explosion of ultra-processed foods, refined grains, industrial seed oils, and, sugar, added sugar in everything, right? And those foods are all those are heavily tied to metabolic disease. Lie number 3, you must eat breakfast. Many people believe skipping breakfast is unhealthy. But historically, humans didn't eat 3 meals plus snacks every day. People ate when food was available, a lot of times later in the day. Now, there's plenty of evidence, to show that it is better to eat earlier in the day. But again, you should be making decisions based on what serves you well, right? But regarding the breakfast thing, it's cereal companies that came up with this idea because they needed customers. So they pushed the message that breakfast was essential and that the best breakfast was sugar in a box. Now, here's the important part for recovery. Constant eating keeps your brain constantly stimulated by food. And for someone recovering from disordered eating and food addiction, learning how to create structure around meals is going to be very powerful. Okay, lie number 4, cholesterol is the enemy. For decades, we were told that cholesterol was the villain. But cholesterol is actually essential for hormone production, our brain function, cell repair. And, that doesn't mean cholesterol never matters, but the story was simplified in a way that has created fear around foods that humans have eaten for generations, okay? Meanwhile, inflammation, processed foods, and metabolic dysfunction has been largely ignored. Okay, lie number 5. This is another one. So frustrating. Salt is dangerous. Salt has been demonized for decades, but the reality is more nuanced than that. Like, there's a lot of traditional cultures that consumed high salt diets, and they didn't have high rates of hypertension, i.e. high blood pressure. Okay, what changed wasn't salt, it was the rise of, again, feel like I'm beating a dead horse, processed foods, sugar, industrial seed oils. And again, the pattern shows up. When whole foods disappear and processed foods take over, our health suffers. Lie number 6, you're sick instead of deficient. This one hits home for a lot of people. There's, chronic fatigue, brain fog, mood swings, low energy, and all of these symptoms are treated only with medication. But really, it's a matter of the body is lacking a diet of real food, sunlight, regular movement, important minerals, and rest, right? Our body is incredibly intelligent. It isn't broken, but it's probably depleted. And, let's connect this to food addiction recovery here, because this is the key point of this episode. Many of us come into recovery believing something deeply painful, right? We believe that we're the problem. We think I have no willpower. I just can't control myself. I'm just broken. I'm unhelpable. But when you look at the food environment that we have been living in, it becomes very clear that many of the foods that people struggle with were literally engineered to keep us eating, okay? That doesn't remove personal responsibility. That's not what I'm saying, but it does remove shame. We're not weak. We're not, we're just surrounded by foods designed to override normal hunger signals and messages that have encouraged us to eat them, okay? So let's talk about the work of recovery and what it requires. Recovery is going to require more than just changing what we eat. It requires changing what we believe. Beliefs about food and hunger, beliefs about our body, beliefs about what discipline is and what it looks like and what it doesn't, beliefs about our own self-worth. If you believe food controls you, recovery is going to feel impossible. If you believe that you're broken and weak, you're gonna stay stuck. But when you understand what actually happens, what's been happening in our food culture, you can start to realize we're not crazy, we're not weak, we're just navigating an environment that's been stacked against us, right? And now we get to, we get to rebuild our relationship with food intentionally. Okay. And here's the empowering part about that. Once you see through all of the confusion and the crap that's been thrown at us, things start to get simpler. We switch to eating only real food, having consistent nutrient-dense meals, setting up what that structure looks like. Is it 2 or 3 meals a day? Not eating at night, like setting up a structure, having accountability and a community of support, and learning how to sit with uncomfortable emotions without numbing them with food. That's not all the work of food sobriety, but that's a important part of it. And the women and men who learn to do those things, we discover that food can stop controlling our life. Okay, if you're working on food sobriety right now and you're struggling, I want you to remember this. Your past struggles do not mean that you are broken or unhelpable. Your past does not dictate your future. It doesn't have to dictate your future. Those struggles often mean that we were following advice that never addressed our real problem. I know that was the case with me. I remember feeling very angry when I, started this journey, and I literally did everything opposite of what I had been told by the so-called professionals for all of my life. I did the opposite of what they said, and I healed everything. Okay, so this is the good news. Once you start changing your beliefs and you build a new relationship with food, everything starts to change. And if you want help with that process, I would love to support you. You can come join my Food Freedom Tribe, or you can apply for private coaching and check in with me to see if I have any openings for that. And if you haven't already, make sure you're on my email list so you don't miss any future episodes or helpful strategies. All right, friends, until next time, keep showing up for yourself and pursuing food sobriety, because the freedom that you're looking for is absolutely possible. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you in the next episode.